In the heart of Birmingham, Alabama, a black man poured his soul into a struggling auto repair shop, fighting to keep it alive against all odds. On a bone-chilling Thanksgiving evening, when the world seemed to pause for family dinners and warm laughter, he chose a different path. Can you imagine it? While folks gathered around tables laden with turkey and pie, he pulled over on a desolate highway to help a stranded family whose car had given up in the icy darkness. He gave up his own holiday plans, his chance to sink into the comfort of cornbread and collard greens, just to get them moving again. Little did he know, this one selfless act would spark a chain of events that would turn his life upside down in the best way possible. Elijah Carter slumped over his desk in the flickering light of Carter Auto Repair's cramped office, his fingers pressing hard against his temples as he stared at a mess of unpaid bills. The numbers mocked him, refusing to add up no matter how many times he crunched them. Business had been painfully slow for months, and with the economy teetering, people only dragged their cars in when they were on their last gasp. His shop, once a bustling hub built on years of grit and heart, was now clinging to life by a thread. He'd already had to let go of one of his mechanics, a good man, a friend, and the thought of more cuts twisted his gut. Could he really lose this place? This shop wasn't just a business. It was his father's dream, his legacy, the one thing Elijah had poured every ounce of himself into preserving. Outside, the late November wind roared like a warning, rattling the garage windows and sneaking icy fingers through the cracks. No match for the wheezing heater. It was the day before Thanksgiving, and Birmingham was alive with the hum of holiday prep. Folks rushing to grocery stores, ovens preheating for pies, families counting down to a cozy meal together. But Elijah, he was stuck here, drowning in worry, trying to figure out how to keep the lights on for just one more month. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of his spiral. He glanced at the screen. Jasmine, his sister. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he answered, forcing a bit of cheer into his tired voice. "Hey, Jazz. Hey, big brother." Her voice was like a warm blanket, laced with that mix of love and worry only a sister could pull off. "You're still coming for Thanksgiving tomorrow, right? The kids are practically bouncing off the walls to see their Uncle Elijah." He leaned back in his creaky chair, letting out a heavy sigh. "Yeah, of course. I'll be there at 5, promise." But she wasn't buying it. "You sure? You sound off." He chuckled, though it felt hollow. "Just a long day, that's all. But I'll be there. Tell those kids to save me a big OL plate. Okay?" "You got it," she said, though the concern lingered like a shadow. "See you tomorrow, Elijah." The second he hung up, he dragged a hand down his face, exhaustion settling deeper into his bones. He wanted nothing more than to be there for his niece and nephew, to see their gap-toothed grins and hear their wild stories. But his mind was a storm of debt and doubt, each unpaid bill a thunderclap. Still, he swore to himself he'd shove it all aside for one night, soak in the warmth of family, and pretend everything was okay. He had to. Come morning, Elijah was up before dawn, throwing himself into work like it could drown out his fears. He tuned up a rusty sedan, swapped out brakes on a minivan, checked oil levels on a pickup, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind quiet. But the truth? Customers were scarce. The holiday season always hit hard, and this year felt like a punch to the gut. By 4:30, the shop was a ghost town and he was ready to call it quits. He grabbed his worn leather jacket, zipping it tight against the biting cold, and stepped outside toward his truck. Snow flurries danced down, dusting the pavement in a thin, ghostly white. For a moment, he stood still, breathing in the silence, letting the chill clear his head as he fumbled for his keys. Then his phone rang, shattering the quiet. An unknown number blinked on the screen. He hesitated. "Who calls this late on Thanksgiving Eve?" "Carter Auto Repair. This is Elijah," he answered, voice steady but curious. A woman's voice, sharp with panic, spilled through the line. "Oh, thank God. Is this the owner? Please, we need help. Our car broke down on Highway 65, and we've called every shop around. Nobody's picking up. It's freezing out here, and we've got 2 little kids with us." Elijah froze, his breath catching. He glanced at his watch. Time was slipping away. He was supposed to be halfway to Jasmine's by now, picturing her kitchen filled with the smell of turkey, gravy, and that sweet cornbread he loved. His niece and nephew were probably counting the minutes till he walked through the door. But then he heard it, soft, unmistakable sobs of children in the background. His heart clenched. How could anyone leave them out there? "Where exactly are you?" he asked, already turning back toward the shop, his boots crunching in the snow. "Mile marker 78, near the Montgomery exit," the woman said, her voice trembling. "Maybe from the cold, maybe from fear. The car just died, out of nowhere. My husband's tried everything, but it won't budge." Elijah let out a slow breath, knowing there was no turning back now. "Hang tight," he said, firm but gentle. "I'm on my way." He dialed Jasmine quick, his fingers fumbling with the keys. "Sis, I'm so sorry, but something's come up. There's a family stuck on the highway, kids with them. I gotta help." A beat of silence. Then her sigh, soft and knowing. "I knew you'd say that, Elijah. Just be careful, okay? And if you wrap up early, your plate's still here." He smiled despite himself. "Thanks, Jazz. I'll try." Hanging up, he grabbed his tools, his mind already racing to the job ahead. The snow was coming down harder now, turning the roads into a slick, treacherous mess. His truck's headlights carved through the early evening gloom as he navigated the near-empty highway. He'd seen too many wrecks in weather like this. Twisted metal, shattered lives, and the thought kept his grip tight on the wheel. After 20 minutes, he spotted it. A black SUV slumped on the shoulder, hazard lights pulsing like a faint heartbeat against the thickening snowfall. A man stood outside, waving a flashlight, his silhouette sharp against the white. Elijah pulled over and stepped out, the cold hitting him like a slap, seeping through his jacket. His boots crunched on ice as he approached. The man, maybe early 40s, had a solid build but looked rattled, his eyes wide with worry. "You Elijah?" he asked, voice tight. "Yeah, you must be Marcus," Elijah said, offering a gloved handshake. "What's going on?" "No clue," Marcus said, scrubbing a hand over his shaved head. "1 second we're fine, next the engine just quits. No lights, no nothing. Dead as a doornail." Elijah nodded, leaning into the SUV's window. Inside, a woman, Lauren, he guessed, clutched a blanket around 2 young kids, their small faces pale, eyes huge with fear. They couldn't have been more than 6 or 7. His chest tightened. Poor kids. How scared were they? "Pop the hood," he said to Marcus, already moving. "Let's see what's up." One look at the engine and he knew this was no quick fix. The electrical system was toast, wires fried, battery probably frozen solid in this cold. "Bad news," he said, shutting the hood with a thud. "This ain't something I can patch up here. You'll need a tow, and a warm place to wait while I dig into it." Marcus glanced at Lauren, then back, his jaw tight. "How long we talking?" Elijah didn't sugarcoat it. "Few hours, maybe more, depending on what I find at the shop." Lauren's face crumpled, and she spoke, voice breaking. "We're headed to Atlanta. My mom, she had a heart attack. The doctors, they don't know if she'll make it through the night." Marcus's hand found her shoulder, steadying her as her words cracked. Elijah's heart sank. He knew that pain too well. His own mother, gone in a flash, no chance for a goodbye. The memory stung, sharp and raw. No way was he letting this family face that. "Listen," he said, meeting their eyes. "I'll do everything I can to get you back on the road fast. But first, let's get you out of this cold. All right?" Their grateful nods fueled him as he grabbed his towing chains, the weight of the moment settling in. This was bigger than a broken car. He just didn't know how big yet. Elijah moved fast, hooking the heavy chains to the SUV's undercarriage as snow piled up around him, clinging to his jacket and biting at his face. His fingers, even in thick gloves, were going numb, but he didn't care. Every second mattered. He double-checked each latch, making sure the car was secure, then gave Marcus a nod. "All right, she's hooked. My shop's 10 minutes away. Warm, safe. You and your family can wait there while I sort this out." Marcus let out a shaky breath, glancing at Lauren, who managed a small nod from inside the SUV. "Man, I can't thank you enough," he said, clapping Elijah's shoulder, the cold making his hand tremble. Elijah just waved it off, climbing into his truck and cranking the heat, feeling the tug of the SUV as he shifted into gear. How could he not help? Those kids' scared faces were burned into his mind. Driving slow, he kept one eye on the mirrors, checking the SUV stayed steady behind him. The snow fell thicker, blurring the world to a few feet of gray. His wipers fought a losing battle against the ice and sleet, and he gripped the wheel tighter. One wrong move on these roads could spell disaster. Hadn't he seen enough crumpled cars to know? The highway stretched on, silent but for the hum of his engine and the crunch of snow under his tires. When they finally pulled into Carter Auto Repair, Elijah backed the SUV into a garage bay with practiced ease, the familiar smell of oil and metal grounding him. He hopped out, shaking off the cold, and unhooked the chains as Marcus helped Lauren and the kids from the SUV. They shuffled toward the shop's waiting area. A humble setup with a couple of worn chairs, a tiny TV flickering on the wall, and a coffee machine that coughed more than it brewed. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and right now that's what mattered most. Lauren exhaled, pulling her kids close as they stepped inside, her breath still shaky. "Thank you," she whispered, voice thick with feeling. "You don't know what this means." Elijah gave a small nod, keeping it simple. "I get it." He didn't need to say more. How could words ease the fear of losing someone you love? Instead, he turned to Marcus. "I'm starting on the car now. Anything you need, just give a shout." Marcus watched as Elijah grabbed his toolbox, rolling up his sleeves despite the garage's lingering chill. He hesitated, then stepped to the waiting area's corner, pulling out his phone and speaking low into it. Elijah barely noticed, figuring he was updating family. His focus was the SUV. He popped the hood, and yup, his gut was right. The electrical system was a mess, probably a shorted alternator or bad wiring. This wasn't just a dead battery. It was a beast of a job. He sighed, rubbing his beard, already mapping out the fastest fix. No way was he letting these folks, especially those kids, stay stuck any longer than he had to. The girl, maybe 7, clung to Lauren's side, her eyes darting around, while her younger brother squirmed, restless. Lauren caught it, digging through her bag for a set of coloring books and crayons, fancy ones with thick pages, not the dollar store kind. Elijah noticed but brushed it off. Their nice clothes, the way they carried themselves, it screamed money. But so what? A broken car didn't care who you were, and neither did he. All that mattered was getting them to Atlanta, to that hospital bed, before it was too late. He dove in, the hum of the garage lights his only company as he yanked out fried components and swapped in new ones. Time blurred, his hands moving on instinct. Wrench, screwdriver, repeat. Every so often, he glanced up. Marcus was still on the phone, his face unreadable. Lauren murmured to the kids, her voice soft but strained, like she was holding herself together by a thread. Elijah's jaw tightened. He knew that feeling, the helpless waiting, the dread of what might come. Years ago, he'd sat in a hospital waiting room, praying for his mom, only to lose her. The memory drove his hands faster. Not this time, he thought. Not if he could help it. Hours later, his fingers ached, stiff from the cold and the work. He wiped his brow, smearing grease, and stepped back, rolling his shoulders. The SUV's engine hummed to life, steady and strong. Relief washed over him. Thank God! He turned to find Marcus watching. "All set," Elijah said, wiping his hands on a rag. "She's good to go, but get her CH." Lauren made a small, choked sound and, before Elijah could react, wrapped him in a quick hug, her eyes glistening as she pulled back. "You have no idea what this means," she whispered. Marcus handed over cash for the parts, then pressed a business card into Elijah's hand. "Take this," he said, voice firm. "You ever need anything, call me." Elijah nodded, barely glancing at it before tucking it away. "Safe travels," he called as they gathered the kids, the little ones waving shyly before climbing into the SUV. Then they were gone, taillights fading into the snowy night. Elijah locked up, bone-tired but lighter somehow. Knowing he'd done right, it felt better than any paycheck. He had no clue that card in his pocket was about to change everything. The next morning, Elijah was back at the shop before the sun, the crisp air nipping at his skin as he unlocked the garage. His body groaned from last night's marathon. But regret? Not a drop. He hadn't lingered on Marcus or his family, did what he had to, end of story. But their gratitude? Man, it stuck with him like a warm ember. Maybe it was because it reminded him of his mom, always putting others first. Teaching him kindness wasn't about getting something back. It was just right. He was rummaging for a pen when his fingers brushed that card Marcus gave him. He pulled it out, glancing at it, and froze. Marcus Bennett, CEO, Bennett Motors. The logo hit him like a freight train, sleek, silver, stamped on half the parts in his shop. Bennett Motors wasn't some corner store. It was a giant, supplying auto shops nationwide. He'd fixed the car of a titan and didn't even know it? A laugh escaped him, low and disbelieving. Should he have charged full price? Nah, wouldn't have changed a thing. He'd done it for them, not for a payout. Days dragged on, and the shop's troubles crept back, heavier than ever. The phone stayed quiet, bills piled higher, and the bank's final notice loomed like a guillotine. He pushed through, but the weight was crushing. Then, one frigid December morning, everything flipped. He was elbow-deep in an oil change when tires crunched outside. Not just any tires. A gleaming black SUV rolled in, screaming wealth, followed by another just like it. Who drives those around here? Elijah wiped his hands, stepping out as Marcus Bennett himself climbed from the first SUV, sharp in a suit that probably cost more than Elijah's monthly rent. "Morning," Elijah said, keeping it cool. "Didn't expect you back." Marcus grinned, shaking his hand like an old friend. "Hope you don't mind the drop-in. Car's fine, thanks to you. But that's not why I'm here." He scanned the garage, worn tools, peeling paint, a shop fighting to breathe. "I checked you out after that night," Marcus said. "Talk to folks. You've got a reputation, Elijah. Honest work, no shortcuts, helping people even when it hurts you." Elijah shrugged, a bit shy. "Just doing my job." Marcus's eyes lit up. "Exactly what I need." He nodded to two suit types by the second SUV. "Bennett Motors is growing new service centers nationwide. Fair prices, real quality. I want this shop as our flagship." Elijah's jaw dropped. "His shop? This beat-up place? You want my shop?" Marcus shook his head. "Not just the shop. You asterisk. Your name carries trust. I'm not taking it. I'm investing. Full renovations, new gear, more staff. All on Bennett's dime, with Elijah still in charge. No more scraping by." Elijah's head spun. "What's the catch?" he asked, squinting. Marcus laughed. "No catch. Just keep being you. Keep it honest, like you were with us." Elijah thought of his dad, the shop's roots, the community he served. Then he nodded, hand out. "Let's do it." The weeks after were a blur. Contractors swarming, new lifts rising, fancy tools replacing the old. At first, it felt surreal, like he'd stepped into someone else's life. But Marcus kept his word. Elijah called the shots. He rehired his old mechanic, added two more, and watched his shop grow. The grand reopening buzzed with excitement, old customers cheering what they called his big break. But to Elijah it wasn't luck, it was proof. Do right and it comes back tenfold. One night, as the shop took its final shape, Lauren Bennett walked in, kids in tow, looking lighter than that snowy night. "Not interrupting, are we?" she asked, smiling. "Never," Elijah said, setting aside papers. The boy thrust a folded drawing at him, shy but proud. "For you." Unfolded, it showed a boxy car, a stick figure, Elijah grinning beside it, labeled asterisk Mr. Elijah, the best fixer asterisk. His heart melted. How sweet was that? "You nailed the beard, kid," he said, crouching down. Lauren's laugh was warm. "They haven't stopped talking about you." Her voice softened. "We made it to Atlanta that night. My mom. She held on just long enough to see us, to say goodbye to the kids. She passed the next morning. That was because of you, Elijah." His throat tightened. "I'm glad you got that time," he managed. She looked around, eyes shining. "Marcus told me about this place, how it started with you. You didn't just fix our car, you changed our lives." He shook his head. "Just did what felt right." She smiled, knowing. "That's what makes you special." He pinned the drawing by his mom's photo, a reminder of why he kept going. At the grand reopening, a new sign gleamed. Carter's Auto Care, a Bennett Motors partner. Marcus introduced him to industry bigwigs, calling him the man who showed me real service. But Elijah stayed Elijah. Hands dirty, heart open, greeting every customer like family. And every Thanksgiving, the shop opened for emergencies, a promise to anyone stranded. He'd be there. 3 years later, a father limped into the lot, kids in back, car sputtering. Elijah stepped up, sleeves rolled. "Let's fix this." That shop, once on its knees, became a community cornerstone, a beacon of trust. He started a foundation training kids in auto repair, giving them futures. Marcus matched every cent. Every Thanksgiving, volunteers kept the doors open, fixing cars and serving meals, proving kindness lived. One of those nights, another desperate dad pulled in, kids scared, hospital on the line. Elijah fixed their car, a clogged fuel pump, and waived off payment. "Thanksgiving gift," he said, smiling. The man's gratitude echoed Marcus's years before. Later, Elijah found Marcus watching, arms crossed, grinning. "You didn't hesitate," he said. Elijah laughed. "Didn't even think about it." Marcus smirked. "Ever wonder what had happened if you hadn't answered that call?" Elijah's eyes drifted to the shop, alive with purpose. "All the time. Wouldn't change a damn thing." They walked inside, the garage humming with life. A testament to one choice, one night, one man who cared. Elijah Carter dove into the job with a fierce determination, his tools clanking against the SUV's engine as the garage's overhead lights hummed like a quiet heartbeat in the stillness. Can you believe it? While the rest of Birmingham was probably carving turkey or passing mashed potatoes, here he was, elbow-deep in wires and grease, swapping out fried components for new ones with a focus that drowned out the world. Time slipped away in a haze, the steady rhythm of wrench and screwdriver pulling him into a trance. Every so often, he'd glance up, Marcus pacing in the corner, still muttering into his phone with that unreadable look, or Lauren, her voice soft but strained as she whispered to her kids, her face tight with worry. Those kids, God, their wide eyes stuck with him. He pushed harder, his hands moving faster. He knew that gut-wrenching limbo too well, the kind where you're stuck, powerless, waiting for news that could break you. Years back, he'd lived it himself, sitting in a sterile hospital waiting room, the cold seeping into his bones as he begged the universe for just a little more time with his mom. Those prayers? They'd fallen flat, leaving him with a hole that never quite closed. His jaw clenched as he twisted a bolt tight. Not this time. No way was he letting this family miss their chance to say what needed saying. By the time he was wrapping up, his hands were screaming, stiff and sore from hours of relentless work. He swiped at his forehead, smearing grease across his skin, and stepped back, rolling his shoulders to shake off the ache. The SUV roared to life, its engine purring smooth and steady under the hood. Thank God! A wave of relief crashed over him, loosening the knot in his chest. He turned to find Marcus right there, watching him with quiet intensity. "She's all set," Elijah said, grabbing a rag to wipe his hands, the grime clinging stubborn to his knuckles. "Should run fine now, but get her checked in Atlanta just to be safe. All right?" Marcus just stared for a beat, like he was searching for words that wouldn't come. "Man, I don't even know what to say," he finally admitted, his voice heavy. "You didn't have to do this. Not on Thanksgiving of all days." Elijah shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Couldn't leave you stranded out there, not with those kids in the car." He paused, his tone softening, raw with truth. "I know what it's like to miss a goodbye. If I can help you dodge that pain, I'm gonna do it." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes. Gratitude, sure, but deeper, like Elijah's words had hit a nerve. He didn't push it, though, just reached for his wallet. "How much do I owe you?" Elijah let out a slow breath, glancing at the register where he'd normally tally up a bill. "Parts alone? Over $800, no question. Labor for a job this long? A few hundred more, easy." But then his eyes drifted to Lauren, bundling up her kids with that same worried crease in her brow, her hands gentle but trembling. His decision came quick, like it was the only one that made sense. "Just cover the parts," he said, firm but kind. "No charge for labor, call it a Thanksgiving gift." Marcus blinked, his hand frozen mid-reach. "You serious?" he asked, like he couldn't quite believe it. "Dead serious," Elijah said, shoving his hands into his pockets, standing tall. "I just wanted to help, that's all." Lauren let out a soft, choked gasp, and before Elijah could brace himself, she stepped forward and wrapped him in a quick, tight hug. It was over fast, but her eyes were shining as she pulled back, wiping at them with a shaky hand. "You have no idea what this means to us," she whispered, her voice thick with feeling. Marcus fumbled with his wallet, handing over enough cash to cover the parts, then dug into his coat pocket and pulled out a business card, pressing it into Elijah's hand with a look that said more than words could. "Take this," he said, his tone steady but insistent. You ever need anything? Anything you call me. Elijah gave a nod, barely glancing at the card before slipping it into his pocket. Safe travels, he called as Marcus and Lauren rounded up their kids. The little ones tossing shy waves his way before scrambling into the SUV. And just like that, they were gone, their taillights swallowed by the snowy night. Elijah let out a long breath, rubbing his hands together to chase off the cold as he locked up the shop. His body was screaming, sore, spent, but his heart, that was full, humming with the quiet satisfaction of knowing he'd done right. How could anything top that feeling? He had no clue that the card tucked in his pocket was about to flip his whole world upside down. The next morning, Elijah was up before dawn, the crisp December air nipping at his skin as he unlocked the garage doors, the familiar creak welcoming him like an old friend. The heater was barely chugging along, but he shrugged off his jacket and dove into work, checking inventory, sorting invoices, anything to keep his mind off the ache in his muscles. Last night's marathon still clung to him, but regret? Not a chance. Why would he regret helping someone who needed it? He hadn't lingered much on Marcus or his family since they'd left. He'd done what he had to, plain and simple, but their gratitude? Man, it stuck with him, warm and stubborn, like a memory he couldn't shake. Maybe it was because it brought his mom to mind, her endless lessons about putting others first, about how kindness wasn't a transaction. Do what's right, Elijah, she'd always said. And don't expect a thing back. That was her way, and he'd carried it like a torch ever since. He was digging through his pocket for a pen when his fingers brushed something else. That business card. He pulled it out, glancing at it absently, but the second he read the name, his breath caught like a hook in his chest. Marcus Bennett, CEO, Bennett Motors. His eyes snapped to the logo, sleek, silver, the same one stamped on half the parts in his shop. Bennett Motors wasn't some mom-and-pop outfit. It was a powerhouse, supplying auto shops and dealerships from coast to coast. He'd spent hours fixing the car of one of the biggest names in the game and didn't even know it. A low whistle slipped out as he leaned against the workbench, his mind reeling. Should he have charged the full rate? The thought flickered, then fizzled. Nah, he'd done it for them, not for clout. That's what mattered, right? The day dragged on, quiet as ever, but by the week's end, the weight of his troubles came crashing back. The phone barely rang. Bills piled up like a cruel joke, and the bank's final notice sat on his desk, glaring. Carter Auto Repair wasn't just struggling. It was teetering on the edge of gone. He tried to shove the stress down to keep his head in the game, but the truth was a heavy chain around his neck. Then, one frosty December morning, everything changed. He was mid-oil change on a beat-up pickup when gravel crunched outside, loud and deliberate. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced up, expecting some guy with a flat tire. Instead, his jaw hit the floor. A black luxury SUV rolled into the lot, gleaming like it belonged in a showroom, not his dusty corner of Birmingham. Another just like it pulled up behind, both screaming money in a way that made his old truck look like a toy. Elijah straightened, his brow furrowing. Who drives cars like that around here? The first SUV's door swung open, and out stepped Marcus Bennett. Not the frazzled dad from that snowy night, but a man in a tailored suit so sharp it probably cost more than Elijah's rent. Elijah tossed the rag aside, wiping his hands on his jeans as he stepped forward. "Morning," he said, keeping his cool. "Didn't think I'd see you again." Marcus flashed a warm smile, shaking his hand like they were old buddies. "Good to see you, Elijah. Hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced." Elijah cocked an eyebrow, glancing at the second SUV, where two guys in slick business suits climbed out, looking like they lived for spreadsheets and contracts. "Gotta say, I'm a bit surprised," he admitted. "Car still running okay?" Marcus chuckled, waving it off. "Runs like a dream, thanks to you, but that's not why I'm here." His eyes swept the garage, the worn-out lifts, the chipped paint, the signs of a shop fighting to stay alive. "I did some digging after that night," he said, his tone shifting, serious now. "Talk to folks around here. You've got one hell of a reputation, Elijah. People trust you. Say you're honest, no shortcuts, always looking out for them, even when it costs you." Elijah shrugged, a little heat creeping up his neck. "Just doing my job, man." Marcus's grin widened. "That's exactly why I'm standing here," He nodded toward the suit guys. Bennett Motors is expanding, building a network of service centers across the country. Fair prices, top-notch work, no shady upsells. And I want this shop, your shop, to be our first flagship location. Elijah's brain short-circuited. His shop, this rundown place. You want my shop? He asked, voice low, like he might have heard wrong. Marcus shook his head, eyes locked on his. Not just the shop, Elijah. This place has trust, and that's rarer than gold. Your name means something here. I'm not taking it from you. I'm investing in it. Elijah crossed his arms, skeptical. Investing how? Marcus didn't miss a beat. Full funding, new equipment, renovations, more staff, whatever you need to make this place shine. You stay the owner, run it your way. Only difference? You've got Bennett Motors backing you. No more sweating bills, no more scraping to keep the doors open. Elijah stared, his mind racing so fast it nearly tripped over itself. Months of sleepless nights, of wondering how he'd save his dad's legacy. And now this? Felt like a dream, too good, too sudden. What's the catch? He asked, squinting. Marcus laughed. A real hearty sound. No catch, just one rule. His gaze turned steady, earnest. Keep being you. Keep treating folks right like you did for my family that night. That's all I ask. Elijah's breath slowed, his thoughts flashing to his dad, to the years of sweat poured into these walls, to the community that leaned on him, then to the future. More jobs, better service, a chance to help without breaking his back to stay afloat. He met Marcus's eyes, his jaw set. All right, he said, sticking out his hand. Let's do it. Marcus's smile broke wide as he shook it, firm and sure. You won't regret this, Elijah. As the suit guys stepped up with papers, Elijah stole one last look around the garage. His garage soon to be something bigger than he'd ever dared dream. All those years wondering if honesty paid off? Here was his answer, shaking his hand, born from one cold night and one choice to care. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind, pure chaos. But the good kind. Marcus wasn't kidding about moving fast. The day after Elijah signed on, contractors swarmed the shop, measuring walls, sketching plans, talking about upgrades he'd only fantasized about. New lifts, shiny diagnostic machines, a waiting area that didn't look like it belonged in a junkyard. All of it was happening, and he didn't have to pinch pennies to make it real. At first, it was a lot. Too much, even. He'd spent so long stretching every dollar, checking his account before buying a single spark plug, that this freedom felt like stepping onto another planet. But as the changes took shape, he saw it. The heart of Carter Auto Repair wasn't going anywhere. It was still his, still him, just with the tools to do more, to be more. All because he'd answered a call on a snowy Thanksgiving night and chose kindness over convenience. How wild was that? Elijah Carter had poured his soul into Carter Auto Repair, building it from the ground up with his own 2 hands. Every wrench, every jack, every oil-stained tool bought one by one through years of grit and grind. Can you imagine the pride in that? Now, though, he stood there watching crews rip out the rusty old machinery he'd nursed through countless jobs, replacing it with sleek, shiny tools that gleamed under the garage lights. Stuff most small-time mechanics like him could only dream of touching. It was wild, almost surreal, and yeah, there were moments when a pang of doubt hit him hard. Was he losing something precious in all this change? But every time that worry slithered in, he shut it down fast. The heart of this place, his heart, wasn't going anywhere. This was still his shop through and through. Marcus Bennett had stayed true to his promise, and that meant everything. Elijah was still the boss, the one calling the shots, steering the ship. The only difference now? He had the kind of resources he'd only fantasized about, the kind that let him do what he'd always dreamed of. Serve his community without that gnawing fear of losing it all. He brought back the mechanic he'd had to let go months ago. Man, the relief on that guy's face. And then hired 2 more, building a team that felt like family. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't just scraping by, clinging to survival. He was growing. How incredible was that? The grand reopening was set for early spring, and word spread through Birmingham like wildfire, lighting up the town with buzz. Longtime customers, folks who'd been coming since his dad's days, started popping by just to peek at the progress, slapping him on the back with big grins, calling it a well-earned blessing. Elijah soaked it in, but he didn't see it as some stroke of luck or a pat on the back from fate. No way. To him it was proof, solid, undeniable proof, that doing the right thing, even when nobody's watching, could spark something massive, something beyond your wildest dreams. One chilly evening, as the shop's final touches came together, Elijah was holed up in his office, hunched over a stack of paperwork, when the front door bell jingled. He glanced up, figuring it was one of his crew needing something, but instead, there stood Lauren Bennett, her 2 kids bouncing at her side. Last time he'd seen her, she'd been a wreck, worn out, barely holding it together under the weight of worry. Now, she radiated calm, a soft peace in her eyes, and her warm smile hit him like a ray of sunshine. "Hope we're not barging in," she said, her voice gentle. "Not a chance," Elijah said, jumping up and waving them in, shoving his papers aside. "Come on in, good to see you." The kids dashed forward, and to his shock, the little boy dug into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, thrusting it at Elijah like it was pure gold. "I made this for you," he mumbled, shy but proud. Elijah took it, unfolding it slow and careful, and what he saw melted his heart. A crayon drawing of a big, boxy car, with a stick figure him standing next to it, grinning wide. Scrawled above in wobbly letters, "Asterisk Mr. Elijah, the best fixer asterisk." He chuckled, a warm glow spreading through his chest. "This is amazing, buddy," he said, crouching down to meet the kid's eyes. "You even got my beard spot on. How'd you do that?" Lauren's laugh was light, like a breeze. "He's been talking about you nonstop since that night." Both of them have. Her face softened, turning serious. "I just had to come by and thank you again, properly this time. We made it to Atlanta that night because of you. My mom. She hung on just long enough for us to get there to see her. She passed the next morning, but she got to say goodbye to her grandkids. That was all you, Elijah." Her voice trembled, thick with gratitude. Elijah nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in his throat. "I'm so glad you made it," he said quietly, his voice rough with emotion. "Really, I am." Lauren let out a shaky breath, her eyes roaming the shop, taking in the gleam of new equipment and the fresh paint. "Marcus told me what's happening here, how it all started because of that night." She locked eyes with him, fierce and earnest. "You didn't just fix our car, Elijah. You changed everything for us." He shook his head, brushing it off. "I just did what anyone would've." But Lauren's smile was knowing, like she saw right through him. "No, you did what the right kind of person does. Don't you dare sell that short." Elijah didn't have a comeback for that, so he just nodded, glancing down at the drawing in his hands. It was simple, crayons on paper, but to him, it was worth more than gold. A treasure he'd never trade. After they left, he pinned it up on his office wall, right next to a faded photo of his mom, her smile frozen in time. That drawing wasn't just a kid's doodle. It was a reminder, loud and clear, of why he kept going, why he poured his heart into this place every single day. As the grand reopening loomed closer, the shop got its final glow-up. A slick new sign went up over the entrance, modern but familiar, proudly declaring Carter's Auto Care, a Bennett Motors partner. The night before the big day, Marcus dragged Elijah to a fancy industry event in Atlanta, introducing him to heavy hitters with handshakes and big talk. "Elijah Carter," Marcus would say, beaming. "The guy who showed me what real service looks like." He'd clap Elijah's hand like they were equals. And yeah, it felt good, but Elijah? He didn't let it go to his head. No way. No matter how big things got, how many bigwigs he rubbed elbows with, Elijah stayed Elijah. He still got grease under his nails, still dove under hoods when his crew needed a hand, still greeted every customer like they were kin. The only difference now, he didn't wake up every day wondering if the bank would take it all away. What a weight off his shoulders. And every Thanksgiving after that snowy night, Carter's Auto Care flung its doors wide. Not for profit, but for anyone in a bind. Stranded drivers, desperate folks, they'd find a light on just like Marcus and his family had. It was Elijah's way of giving back, of keeping that spark alive. 3 years down the road, Elijah was outside the shop, the late afternoon sun dipping low, when a beat-up sedan limped into the lot. A dad climbed out, 2 kids in the back, his face etched with panic as the engine sputtered its last gasp. Elijah grinned, wiping his hands on a rag, already striding over. "Let's see what we're working with here," he said, rolling up his sleeves like it was second nature. Because it was. The years that followed were nothing short of a miracle. Can you even picture it? A shop that had once teetered on the edge of collapse, bills piling up like a death sentence, had blossomed into a thriving lifeline. A rock for the community. A shining example of what honest work could do. It spread across the industry like wildfire. But through all the growth, the glitz, the changes, Elijah Carter stayed the same steady soul. A man dead set on doing right, on fixing more than just engines, on making sure every single person who rolled through his doors left with more than a patched-up ride. That was his magic. Carter's Auto Care became the flagship for Bennett Motors, the first of a whole chain, but Elijah wouldn't let it lose its soul. No corporate sheen could strip away that personal touch. Customers still hollered his name like old pals, and he knew their lives. The single mom scraping by to fix her clunker. The old-timer who'd been towing his pickup here since Elijah's dad ran the show. The young mechanics who showed up green and left with skills to chase their dreams. How could he not pour himself into that? And it wasn't just about cars anymore. Oh no! He'd started a foundation, training up kids from tough spots in auto repair, handing them a shot at a real career, a trade to stand on. Marcus, that man matched every dime Elijah threw in, turning a scrappy little idea into a statewide powerhouse that lifted hundreds of lives. Who could have seen that coming? Every Thanksgiving, the shop turned into a beacon, not for cash, but for emergencies. It was a tradition now, a quiet vow. If you were stuck, lost, or broken down, Carter's Auto Care had your back. The crew volunteered their time, knowing they were part of something bigger than themselves. Elijah made damn sure every traveler who stumbled and left with a fixed car, a hot meal, a steaming coffee, and a reminder that kindness wasn't dead. Not here, not ever. One of those Thanksgiving nights, 3 years after that snowy call that changed it all, Elijah was back at it, wrench in hand, working late under the garage's bright lights. A dad had rolled in just as the sun dipped below the horizon, his car wheezing into the lot with 2 kids in tow. The guy looked wrecked, shoulders slumped, eyes desperate, and his little girl gripped his coat tight, just like Marcus's daughter had way back when. Elijah clocked that look instantly. A man out of options, running on fumes. Now, under those buzzing lights, Elijah wiped his hands on an old rag, glancing up at the pacing father. "All right," he said, nodding at the car with a grin. "She's good to go. Just a clogged fuel pump. Shouldn't give you any more grief. But if it does, you bring her back, and we'll sort it, no sweat." The man let out a ragged breath, dragging a hand over his face before grabbing Elijah's hand in a fierce shake. "I don't even know how to thank you," he said, voice cracking. "We're headed to see my mom. She's in the hospital. I thought we wouldn't make it in time." Elijah's smile was soft, knowing, as he glanced at the kids flipping through coloring books in the waiting area. Ones he kept stashed just for times like this. "No charge," he said, simple as that. "Just get where you need to be." The man's eyes bugged out. "What? No, I can't let you. You've been at this for hours." Elijah waved him off, shaking his head. "Consider it a Thanksgiving gift," he said, the words rolling out easy, like they'd always been there. The guy stared, like he was waiting for the catch. But when he saw there wasn't one, his whole frame relaxed, tension melting away. "Thank you," he choked out, voice thick. "I'll never forget this." Elijah just nodded, steady as ever. "Safe travels, man." As the dad corralled his kids and headed out, something tugged at Elijah. A déjà vu so strong it stopped him cold. The panic, the thanks, the rush to make it in time. It was Marcus and Lauren all over again. He reached into his pocket, fishing out his beat-up wallet, and flipped it open to that worn business card. Edges curled from years of riding with him. Marcus Bennett, CEO, Bennett Motors. He shook his head, a quiet laugh escaping as he marveled at life's crazy loops. Isn't it wild how the tiniest moments, like picking up a phone on a snowy night, can rewrite your whole story? He started back inside, but then he felt someone beside him. Marcus, slipping in unnoticed, stood there in a plain jacket, hands in his pockets, watching it all with that same knowing grin. "You didn't even blink," he said, voice warm with admiration. Elijah chuckled, shrugging. "Didn't even cross my mind to." Marcus nodded, his eyes sweeping the shop. The hum of the bays, the mechanics at work, the folks lingering with coffee, all part of something bigger than just fixing cars. Ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't taken that call 3 years back? He asked, curious. Elijah exhaled, gazing out at the dark street, memories flickering like old film. Yeah, he said, voice low. Think about it all the time. Marcus smirked, and Elijah turned to him, the shop's warmth wrapping around him like a hug. Everything he'd built, everything he'd become. Wouldn't change a damn thing, he said, firm and sure. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, soaking it in, before Marcus clapped him on the back. Come on, he said, grinning. Let's head in. I hear you whip up a mean Thanksgiving spread. Elijah laughed, shaking his head as they walked back into the garage, where the air buzzed with life, cars getting fixed, people getting helped, a legacy of kindness growing bigger than either of them could have dreamed. All from one choice, one night, one heart that wouldn't quit. Oh, how Elijah Carter's story hits me right in the gut. It's a blazing reminder of what a life well lived looks like. Not chasing wealth or status, but pouring your heart into something real, something that lifts others up. I'm in awe of how he built his shop with his own hands, scraping by, yet never lost that fire to do right by people. That's the kind of lifestyle I crave. One where hard work isn't just about survival, but about leaving a mark that matters. Elijah didn't let the grind drown his soul. He kept it alive with kindness, and damn, doesn't that make you want to cheer? Socially, this screams a truth we're too quick to forget. Community isn't some buzzword. It's the lifeline that holds us together. When Elijah chose to help Marcus's family over his own holiday plans, he wasn't just fixing a car. He was stitching a thread of trust through Birmingham. I'm tired of a world obsessed with me first, where people step over each other for a quick buck. Elijah's way. Seeing the single mom, the old-timer, the desperate dad, and meeting them where they hurt. That's the heartbeat of society I'd fight for. It's not handouts. It's hands up, lifting folks so they can stand tall. And the issue that burns me up? We've got to stop letting good people like Elijah teeter on the edge because the system's rigged against them. Banks breathing down their necks, bills choking out dreams. His story turned golden because Marcus stepped in, but how many Elijahs out there don't get that break? I'm passionate about this. We need a world where integrity doesn't just scrape by, it thrives. Elijah's life shouts it loud. Kindness can win, and I'll be damned if I don't root for that every day. Thanks for watching. Don't miss out on more amazing content. Subscribe and click the notification bell for the latest videos. Share this with someone who'd love it as much as you do. Red Heart.